come and talk in a session that they had about recruitment, the issues of recruiting and retaining people in property management. It made an interesting debate. There were lots of questions afterwards. And essentially what we were asked to do was first build a picture of who the protagonists are. So what is an average property manager like? And also as well, what's their employer like? And then Zoe had a lot of data from a study that Block Recruit had conducted, which I'm sure she'll come on to later on. Really just looking at what people want from their employer these days and how that's changed over the years. So I drilled down a bit further and I just got a bit of persona details about this person as well. So if you look at their average name, the most commonly occurring first name is Sarah, and the most commonly occurring female surname is Smith. So we've got this persona of Sarah Smith. They're working their way to becoming an associate level member, and they're in that difficult phase of life where they're a mid-careerist. So you've already had a profession somewhere else, you come in, and all of a sudden you've got all this weight of expectation on you because you're not a rookie, you're not straight out of college, and people just expect you to absorb the information. They expect fewer errors and they deal with errors more harshly in general. You've got all those other things going on at that time of life. You've got a mortgage, you've got kids, you've got nursery, you've got elderly parents, you've got the cost of living crisis, and your day job is being a property manager at the same time. So, there's an awful lot of things going on in that average member's life. And then I had a look at, who the firm managing directors were, looking at armour firms, and it's a completely different profile. So there's a 77% likelihood that they're a man, and they're a whole decade older. So they tend to be 50 years old. Where they are an IRPM member, which isn't true in all cases, they're not necessarily IRPM, but they've been with IRPM for 10 years. And it just built up this profile where we've got the employer coming from a baby boomer or Generation X background and being male, and you've got a millennial female being the property manager. And that was really, the information that Zoe and I looked at and spoke about what that meant, what the impact on the survey was. I'll hand over to Zoe at this stage to talk about what she said at the conference.
So we, as Block Recruit, conduct a salary and qualification survey every year in conjunction with the IRPM. And there's usually sort of a bit of a contrast in terms of what the market wants versus what the market's actually offering, as in any sector. However, the results coming back from this year were so far apart that it's almost like the candidates are moving at such a rate, but the employers are so far behind in catching up that the alignment is so far out of sync that it kind of explains the recruitment crisis. I think generally in terms of block management as a sector, we're pretty far behind. We've only kind of just moved into the era of flexible working, and that was because of a pandemic. In terms of the results that were coming back for us, so if we take the benefits, for example, the top 3 benefits that people have in the sector right now, the first is pension, so that's just a company pension. The second is paid membership, so that's professional membership, so like the IRPM, RICS. And the third is paid training, so again, IRPM, RICS. What people actually want as their top 3, the first was enhanced holiday, which is 25 to 30 days plus bank holidays. Second was flexible working, and that's when they can decide which days are their flexible days. So that's not the employer saying, it has to be 2 days a week and it has to be a Monday and Wednesday. That's the person themselves being able to decide. And the third was a bonus. So very much sort of coming outside of the pandemic, the main trends have been sort of health and wealth, essentially, for the sector. And that's kind of not really adding up with still what's being offered. There are a few companies out there that are sort of clocking on and really looking at their employer branding and their employee value proposition to be able to attract. But because there's so many companies that are so slow to being able to adjust to what people actually want, or perhaps not really wanting to acknowledge it, it's making it so much harder for them to one, attract and recruit, but also retain.
So yeah, I heard Malcolm speak last week, and I was doing a lot of nodding, and I could see where we're going with it. I think it's horses for courses. I think that you can't say that flexible working is right for everybody, and you can't say that being office based all the time is right for everybody. What I would say is that looking at this business and having been in the business for, as you know, for a long time, there's a certain magic that happens in a factors business where sometimes teams of people collaborate in a very personal way, and it creates excitement, it creates energy. Problem solving is a big part of what we do. We can have all of our ducks in a row, and there's always something that comes up that we can't anticipate. And from our experience, the best way to deal with that is when people are working in close proximity, and you can literally, and it sounds like a cliche, you can turn to the person next to you and say, "What do you think?"
We look at it from our customers' point, because at the end of the day, we're a customer service driven industry, customer service driven business, and we need to satisfy that customer base by having suitable amount of staff. So when we talk about, staff choosing when to work, well, that doesn't always, that doesn't suit the customer. They're not thinking about, well, when does the customer need us? And as a business through history, we've worked out, well, the hours that we operate within are when we're able to offer our customers the best service, and that seems to work well. But if we start looking at them down to a 4-day working week, for example, which is the end thing at the moment, well, that's 20% less our customers have access to us, or we need to increase our staff by 20%. And therefore, does the customer's cost go up by 20% to match that? So I don't think most employers are just sitting going, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not giving you more holidays. I'm not being flexible when you want, because it doesn't suit them, or it's financially related. I think they're looking at the bigger picture and saying, well, actually, this is what our customer needs. And without our customers, we actually don't have a business. So by us modelling our business and how it operates around what the customers need, that actually protects the employee, because it protects their job. You can look at it even further. It protects the industries around about us. It protects the local news agent or the local coffee shop where you've got people coming in and out of offices. As well. So there's a bigger social construct that isn't considered when we're looking at, because I heard statements like employers are behind, and employers that refuse to change or refuse to adapt, will be left behind. I'm not sure they can be.
Yeah, well, I heard you in that podcast with Malcolm refer to an organisation, or you knew some organisations that allowed that 4-day compressed.
Yeah.
Now, I did that.
I wonder who that was. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I did it because we had a lot of good people. We when we started out with a real young team that all, as you said, they were all friends. So it should be, because the person that's just, ultimately whether it's a managing director or CEO, it's the person that's ultimately responsible, but it doesn't make you any different from the team that you're working with. So the point you just made earlier on there about not asking anyone to do something that you're not willing to do yourself or have already done yourself.
Yeah.
I had a situation the other day where there was a health and safety training came up, and it was put around the team, or right round the whole team, of which there's over 120 of them, and I entered that and said, I'm going. But I said to one of my colleagues, I said, I'm going to that because A, I want to know what they're getting trained up in, and B, then I'm sending out a clear signal that I'm not asking them to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself.
Yeah.
So from that point as well, there's the good people that we had in our business, and we've done it within the last year as well. Some have went off on maternity, some have came and approached us and asked to have the compressed days. Yeah. They are good, solid, loyal, committed, talented individuals. So why wouldn't you compress that into 4 days? Because as long as you can prioritise and organise your team with that structure in place, then it really can work, and it does work, and it's been proven. It's been working again. It's another 15, 16 years model that's been proven and continued to be proven. So there is unfortunately some roles and organisations that maybe challenge that slightly, but it's about looking for other ideas, other solutions to offer them something different. So again, it just because that type of chat that we're having there is your culture. I mean, you're creating. It's all based on that values, and when you look at you again, we're going to. You keep driving me down these things. You know how passionate I am about it. It's like I was brought up to be told to stick with these 5 words. You'll be all right. Fair, reasonable, rational, manners, and respect. You take that into an organisation, and you apply the same set of values. Might be different words, but they remain the same. So if you approach everything, whether it's dealing with homeowners, home builders, suppliers, your colleagues, and apply the same formula, you really can't go wrong. So
yeah. I mean, the main points I saw, the working from home. Obviously, we were forced into it at one point through COVID. We still operate what we would call a hybrid workspace, where we do have staff that work from home at times through laptops and phones. They're all connected constantly. We're obviously progressing with the cloud-based thing, so we're completely mobile then. But I think there's definitely a change in, even in the sort of time I've been involved, there's definitely a change in the feeling around firms, I believe. And obviously I'm speaking primarily from McPhee's point of view, but they talked about the perception of the old guard, really, who were the hierarchy. They were almost feared in their offices with their suits on, and it's Mr. Welsh this and Mr. Bruce that, and that's very much not the case at McPhee anyway. And I think it's moving away from that across the other firms as well, where it's more of an open door policy, a bit more of a collective group solution we're looking for, and it's being able to feed off of each other. I mean, we've got properties where you mentioned John's been a property manager at our firm. He was there doing it 15, 20 years ago, and he'll remember those properties, and he'll be able to help you with context for things as well. So it's having that, in the past, I would imagine there was more a fear of, I can't go and ask him, he's the managing partner. We couldn't do that. It's very much open door now. It's, part of it. You can come and go and have a chat about nonsense, but also work as well. And it's not quite as restrictive as I think it used to be. And I've seen a wee bit of a change just even in my time. But very much the flexible working environment, both in office and literally outside of office as well. But I agreed with what you said about that. It's definitely moving in that way.
I get it.
I'm actually going to take that one. I actually have 2 Gen Z children, and kind of proud to say that they have both followed in the footsteps of their mother, and they are both working in housing. So I do believe that making them come to gala days and making them, do their volunteering as they were growing up, obviously had an impact. and they are, they're both work for different two separate companies, but they do different roles, but they're both in housing. And I know them, and obviously they're sets of friends, and there's 6 years between my two children, so one's 20 and the other one's 26, and so they're both of them Gen Z. But I found they've got a great work ethic, and a lot of their friends have the same, but they don't think the way that I did when I was kind of growing up. I've stayed long terms in jobs for like years, and really kind of had to Velcro myself off, to move elsewhere. However, they don't view the world that way. They try on different roles. They're more fluid. They were already flexible before we had the pandemic, is the way I put it. And they learn their craft. They're very good technically, technical stuff, much more up to speed than most of like my generation. And they don't have that, I need to stay here for 20 years, or I'm looking for a job for life, the way that maybe we thought about. I admire it, because I think there's an element that's quite brave. I don't know how they'll get a good pension, because they never stay long enough in one place to kind of build up their pension, which worries me greatly, but they have no concern of. However, I do think that when they find the right fit, they then become loyal, and they stay, but as long as there's some opportunities or a career path that they can see, they'll stay. It's just a different way of thinking. And I think you have to embrace it as an employer. I think you have to stop seeing it as, I'm not investing money in them to development. What you have to do is find ways to create those opportunities, and succession planning, I think, is much more important now than it used to be, because you have to see, how do I keep this talent, and how do I keep them, flowing through our organisation. That's the way I see it anyway.
That osmosis point, I think, is really critical for bringing on the next generation. And I'm not speaking of age, I'm just speaking of experience within the industry. That osmosis piece, just hearing what's going on, hearing the tone of a phone call. If there's a difficult, one of your colleagues, an experienced colleague, is handling a difficult call, you start to listen in, don't you? And you can hear how that call, and you think, you know what, they're staying calm, they're being really generous, they're investing some time. That's how to handle a call. And you pick that up purely through osmosis. You won't get that working in a home environment or a virtual environment. So there's, without question, there is value in being back in the office. But it does depend, again, on the person and on the function. As I say, most of our team tend to head into the office for 1 or 2 days a week. That's it for TPI. But of course, we make a point of having quite a number of socials. We get together. During COVID, I recruited people from all across the country. So I've got customer service people in the Midlands. This is supposed to be London-based in theory, but in the Midlands, down in Colchester. So they're dotted all over, and some people come in and some people don't. But there is an osmosis point, and setting culture without having an office presence is doable. We've done it. We've built a business. We did the full merger. All of that was done on, the growth of the business, and then the merger and the setting of the new culture was done entirely online. So it can be done. It can be done. But especially when you're bringing in new blood, it's great to be able to sit in the office and have a chat.